Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. Imagine you have 5 department heads reporting to you, and they're all sitting in a room, and they know that there's a decision that has to be made with regard to allocating a big chunk of next year's budget. And you've got to make this happen. These are all smart people. They're all capable, and they all care about your customers. So it isn't like there's a foul fish in the bunch. This isn't the sign of a dysfunctional organization. It's the sign of a normal one. And they're all going to be coming in there competing for their strategies. So today I'm going to walk you through a couple of principles to consider in a situation like this, as well as a scenario to help you understand. And if you don't envision ever having to deal with 5 really intelligent, sharp, competitive department heads all looking at you, you can use this in your family. And you can use it in your church group. You can use it even in Toastmasters when there are smart people all competing together. So the key is not to win this meeting. The key is to come up with a solution that they will all support during the course of the year. Otherwise, the organization really will not be a success. So let's talk. What is conflict? Is a collision of concerns. That's just what it is. They all come in and they all have their concerns. And there are different competitive modes in a meeting like this. In the past, I've talked to you about identifying personality styles and working together with those styles. But in this case, it's not your goal to identify that you're really aggressive and you're hiding secrets. Or the idea is to sense the room. Where are they? You know at the beginning they're going to be all competing. So where do you want to get them through a process to where they're all collaborating? And it's several steps to get there. But that is the process choice here. Move them from competing to collaborating. Now the key here, and Harvard Business School has done a ton of research on this, is to shift people in 4 basic principles. If you can remember these rules. Number 1, you want to separate the individual people from their problem. You want vision whiteboard. People here move the problem out of their head and onto the whiteboard so it can be looked upon objectively. Secondly, you want to get people to focus on their interests, not their positions, and I'll explain that in a second. And you want collectively to brainstorm options to solve this problem. I will sneak in the word cohesiveness here. But the number one thing to remember in any discussion like this is you have to have them all look at what are objective criteria, that they can all agree that that's a solution. The other key part of running a meeting like this is to create what's called psychological freedom. People come into a meeting, they have hidden agendas. They're really worried about stuff. Some might worry about whether their department will even exist. They might be working for T-Mobile or Microsoft or a whole bunch of other tech companies that are just eliminating levels of management. They might be worried about all these things, and they see the final outcome here as kind of maybe a suggestion for what might follow that. So you've got to get people to be very honest and speak out. You've got to say things like, What are we not talking about here, folks? What would happen that might help you change your mind? What kind of data would you like to have to cause you to change your mind? You need to get it all out, and they have to feel comfortable. There should be no feeling of punishment or after the fact regret. So here's the scenario. Figure you've got 5 department heads. The person in sales says, I want to improve customer onboarding. The person in operations says, I want a self-service portal. You can imagine what the person from finance says. I want cost containment. That's what they all say. That's the way they're trained. So how do you get there? First of all, you've got to work with the group to create what you could call a North Star. This is something that they all can embrace. Now what that does is it creates a shared purpose for all of them. Remember, we already separated them from their problems. Now they all have a shared idea of what is a win for them and their customers and their company. Then you have to convert what would be positions into interests. An example of a position is the marketing person comes in, says, I want $400,000 because I need this new portal. Now, what you've got to go for is to say, okay, what's that really mean? And in the case of a salesperson, it could be, I want to reduce multiple callbacks from our customers by 20%. Because that'll improve customer attitude and customer experience. You need them to be very specific. The ops person, the finance person can't say, I want just cost containment. Obviously, each one of them have to separate their kind of thing they came into the room with something very specific. And you put that up on a whiteboard or on an easel pad, and you go through and you begin to quantify with them what are the impacts, what are the measurables. Now examples would be, what percentage improvement in customer usage and attitude, repeat purchase, that kind of thing. How quickly can it take with this approach to get to full value? When do we get payback, and then when do we start seeing value? Is it scalable? Are there impacts on other parts of the organization that you haven't even envisioned? So you go through and you put all of that on a whiteboard or easel pad, and then you use a simple scoring model to try to put some relative value on those different things. Now in the past, what I've done is I've given everybody little round stickies, red, yellow, and green. And everybody gets to quietly, and maybe you give them 3 of each so they can really have impact. They go up and they score. They put where they want. The person that's a shy person in the room that feels overwhelmed by the big loudmouth marketing guy, they're going to feel comfortable enough to put stickies up. But you want to make sure nobody's being suppressed. So you do that. Now what does that do? That tells everybody else with their interests how relatively important their own point of view is. And it will help them beginning to say, well, I'm not sure I like it, but I can appreciate its relative value, and I think I can buy that. So they're starting to understand what counts. Then the next step is you walk them through a decision process. Who of those in the room or somewhere outside the room, who has to make the recommendation to do this thing? Who has to be consulted? Who gets to make the decision? And then who needs to be informed? It puts it into kind of a balance here that helps everybody understand what needs to be done. And that's cohesiveness also. So the answer is, if sales doesn't get their way for the $400,000 that they want, they can at least say, I appreciate that, and I understand that I'm not going to get the $400,000. And that's how you get conflicts resolved. You set the North Star, you set some objective criteria, you allow everybody to participate, as opposed to being the boss and say, I just want to hear what you have to say because I'm going to go down the hall and make the decision myself. That's not a good boss, but that's the old style of boss. You need to be participative if you're going to lead people, and that's the way to get there. Let me just do a quick wrap up. You've got to move opinions to criteria, positions to interests. You've got to take silence to candor. They all have to be able to be honest and not be frightened. And you've got to move from a debate to decision rights. And once you do that, you're going to have a team that not only will walk out of the room happy with their decision, but they will work together for the rest of the year to make it all be successful. Thank you.